Do you feel like you're beating your head against the wall? Do you feel stuck in the craziness? How would it feel to close 100% of your quotes and proposals? Chris Branscum, owner of Ace and Hammer Construction of Atlanta, shares in this episode how he was stuck in the construction industry and everything changed once he niched down to historical restoration and preservation. It's an interesting one. The crazy can stop when you choose who you serve. It's time to tune in. This is Help, I'm a Contractor podcast. Hi, I'm Seth Lewis. I am a blue collar business coach. Finally, someone that understands what contractors actually go through. My goal and vision is to connect business owners with knowledge while tackling some of the industry's toughest challenges. Please subscribe to my content and let's support each other to create awareness for our industry. Check out what I have going on at www.bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. Check out my book that has helped business owners across the country change their business and their life. But for now, it's time for the show. Let's get it. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Seth, how you doing, man?
Man, I really appreciate you being on the show. Chris from Ace and Hammer Construction. And one of the things that you are involved in is restoration and preservation and some cool projects. So the first thing I want to ask is, has there been any crazy stories, cool projects that you've been involved in, or things that you've uncovered in the process of restoration, preservation, and anything like that?
Actually, funny you say that. Just last week, we were tearing down some brick veneer from a house in historic Druid Hills area, Atlanta, and we found a comic strip news clip. Actually, it wasn't a news clip. It was several pages. It was probably 10 pages of a comic from a newspaper. And lo and behold, we looked on the date. It said August 1922.
Wow.
So almost to the month. So this was behind the brick veneer in front of the framing. So, we can say that, okay, the house was already framed, the structure was already built. I'm assuming this was the Mason's comic almost exactly 100 years ago. And the new owners of the property, they pulled records. The best that the records could see was the first occupancy in this house was actually 1927.
Wow.
So they were thinking that the house was built around that time. And sure enough, we see this comic strip news clipping. It was actually, so the top layer and the bottom layer were like disintegrated and moldy and stuff. But since it was like 10 pages, the inside pages are actually pretty well preserved. A little staining from the ink, and there's only one page that actually has the date.
Wow.
And it was an Atlanta Journal Constitution. It came out of the Atlanta Journal Constitution,
Oh, wow.
August 1922.
That's cool. So you didn't find any like $2 million in cash in any of these
No,
deals
we didn't.
anywhere?
We didn't find any bagged loot anywhere. Unfortunately, we never get that lucky. But we're always finding stuff. I mean, you'll talk to a lot of guys, and the most common things they'll find will be like old Coke bottles and Budweiser cans, and the peel top type cans. We find those all the time, but this is the first time I think that we found something kind of historically significant that set an actual date of when this house was actually built. To say that we're literally working on this house that is, I mean, literally within 2 weeks of exactly 100 years old, right? And I
Wow.
don't, I don't know, this house is there's really nothing special to it. It's kind of a bigger house, but back in the 1920s, I have no idea how long it takes to build something like this. Before COVID and with modern technology and techniques that we have at our disposal these days, a house like that could take 8 to 9 months to build, start to finish. I imagine this took several years to build.
Guy needed a break. I mean, it was getting too long. He needed a comic strip to keep it light.
I guess so. And then he just kind of left it, and he just kind of left it, and let went about his day and laid his brick. And I kind of wonder if he did that on purpose. We
So I
always
guess
kind of wonder if some people leave stuff on purpose. Like every once in a while, you'll see a signature with a date, so you can say, okay, somebody was leaving this as a timestamp, right? But yeah, with Coke bottles and cans and newspaper clippings and stuff, I always wonder if that was intentional, you know?
so. How often do you think that happens today? I mean, do you know any builders that are doing that intentional, or do you think it's the crew members that sneak something in there and say,
It's usually
"Hey,
the crews. It's usually the crews, you know, it's like you've got a porta john on site, right? Everybody loves to put their signature in the porta john. It's really no different.
yeah." So
Sheetrock guys, towel guys, yeah, they'll write their name or write something funny or something stupid and you know moronic.
right. Yeah, I was
But
wondering what the cool thing is to put in the walls today, if there's anything. But
I don't know. It would be crazy. There's not much you can get by with stuff today, though. I mean, everything's sealed up really good and accessible, and
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, really interesting stuff. I know you're interested or in some of the preservation restoration, the owner of Ace and Hammer. So just tell us a little bit more about Ace and Hammer, how that got started, what you do, and just a little bit about that. I mean, you're in the Atlanta
Sure.
area. Yep.
Yeah, it actually came. It was 2000. It was late 2018. I was actually working for a restoration company, insurance restoration. Um, I've been working with them for a couple of years. They brought me on so that they can get into specifically fire restorations. They weren't doing anything like that before, and they didn't even have their contractor's license. So they hired me for my contractor's license so that we can get into bigger jobs and multifamily, specifically fires. So that's kind of where I started. We started with fire restoration, and we're not talking about a little grease fire in the kitchen. We're talking, you know, 3 or 4 units completely burned to the ground out of a 10 unit building, right? Um, so I started doing that, and then that kind of rolled into fire restoration on historically protected homes. It just kind of naturally happens. There's really not a whole lot of guys, as many restoration contractors as there are in the Atlanta market. I guess there's really not a whole lot that can say they specialize in fire. And it's not that I specialized in fire, it's just I think I was just crazy enough to take on that kind of work, and nobody else was willing to do it. So I got a few big ones under my belt. Got a once insurance cut. I mean, insurance carriers and adjusters, they're notorious for, once they find their restoration company to work with, they're going to call you every time, right? They've already worked with you. They already know your process, so it's a lot easier to get repeat work. And when you're doing something like fire restoration, these guys didn't have anybody. These guys didn't have anybody. There was a lot of horror stories and trial and error of other companies who tried to make it happen. And it's tough. There's not a whole lot of money in the insurance game to begin with, so you've got to be right on pretty much the whole time if you want to come out of it profitable. So anyways, long story short, yeah, I started with multifamily fires, that naturally just kind of organically moved into other niche type fire restorations. So historically protected homes in, downtown Druid Hill. I mean, there's a lot of historic neighborhoods in Atlanta. So it wasn't hard for our name to get around, and mine specifically. And then, like I said, late 2018, um, it was one of the homeowners who I kind of looked up to. I admired. Older couple. He had his stuff together, very successful, retired. Very well spoken. I kind of took to him a bit. He says, I bet you can go out on your own and just work on historically protected homes and make a killing. There's such a huge demand for it. And at that time, he was referring directly to his neighbors. His own neighbors are like, hey, you know, I would love to do a full blown renovation on my house. And there's nobody that it will even call them back or even show up. Nobody wants to touch these things. So, anyways,
So when you
so
talk about restoration and historic restoration, I guess if you could maybe just clarify the difference, because somebody that might be listening may not know what regular restoration is.
sure,
And what's the difference of historic restoration?
sure. So, um, take the historic protected part out of it, right? Let's just talk about restoration in general construction. Restoration 9 out of 10 times is going to refer to some type of loss where the insurance company is involved in this. So let's say you have a regular house and your basement floods, right? Super common. Well, the people that work on bringing your basement back to its pre-loss condition is typically going to be a restoration company. Sometimes restoration companies handle the mitigation. They're the 24-hour emergency response team. They're the first to get called out. They'll suck up all the water, set all the dehues and the fans and all that. And some of them will also then segue right into the repair work and kind of get these homeowners completed from start to finish. And that's the company that I worked for prior to starting on my own. And so in the general sense, restoration is 99% of the time related to some type of loss that occurred that insurance companies are involved in. Now, there's all the word restoration is pretty generic. Like if you're talking to a furniture maker, his definition of restoration is, well, he restores furniture, right? We've got textile companies and fabric companies that are restoration services, that they restore carpets, they restore textile type furniture, fabric, stuff like that. It generally speaking, restoration is fixing something back to its original condition, right? So when we're talking about remodels, remodel is not restoration, right? Remodel is taking something original and modifying it to whatever the desired outcome is, right? So when we're talking about remodeling a kitchen, remodeling a bathroom, master bath, basement, you're not getting what you had originally. You're getting something completely different. So that's a remodel. Restoration in comparison is you get what you had originally, right?
That's very interesting, because when you think of a loss of a fire, like say in a house,
Mhm.
and maybe this is common when somebody gets let's say they do lose their kitchen and the restoration company comes in. Are they really remodeling, or by insurance definition, and this is just being curious, and maybe other people have this question too, are they allowed to take that restoration into a remodel?
Absolutely. Oftentimes they do. Absolutely. The insurance companies don't care what you do with the money so long as the money was spent on making you whole again, right? The key term is indemnification. It means that the insurance company by law is required to make you whole, put you back into your pre-loss condition without being a single dollar ahead, right? Indemnification means it's a zero sum. You didn't gain anything and you didn't lose anything. They're going to put you right back to square one. Oftentimes people will take that money. Let's just, a very common example is a grease fire in a kitchen, right? Well, these days that could be $15,000 to $20,000 claim damage, right? Cabinets, you're not restoring those cabinets; those are going to get replaced, right? Sheetrock, backsplash, countertops, flooring, paint, right? Smoke damage. The homeowner can take that $20,000 claim that they received from the insurance company and put it towards a $50,000 to $60,000 kitchen remodel. Oftentimes they do. They're allowed to take advantage of that situation, right? And all the insurance companies care is that you took their $20,000 claim and you spent it on your kitchen, right? And a lot of people don't. So that's kind of another tricky thing, is a lot of people will take that $20,000 claim check, they'll slap some band-aids on their kitchen, and then they'll go to Vegas with the rest and play their odds, or they'll go on that family cruise vacation that they've been wanting for 7 years, right? We see that
Right.
stuff all the time. Hey, it's time to take the kids to Disneyland, right? So
Yeah, that's really interesting, how that works. So one of the things that I would be curious about is, the historic part. What is that? And then the other thing that I want to look at is the importance of the niching
sure.
down as an organization, because one of the things that I heard you say is the fact that, they recommended that you would have enough work. And I can't say this, loud enough, or as as much as it needs said, is business owners forget and think that if they just offer blanket services, they're going to have a lot of work.
Mm.
So what I heard you say is, you're in a very specific niche of, restoration and historical preservation and restoration. So I'd be interested to see, like, were you scared when you went into it? Were you nervous? What does that look like? And how important is that market to specialize in something? And the historical part, what is that? I mean, the regular restoration, sounds pretty clear. What makes it historic?
Good. That's a great question. Because I had to learn about all of this. I was completely wet behind the ear, getting into historic restorations and preservation. So those are all great questions. You know, in the in Atlanta, it's so competitive that there's a lot of people you can call for bathrooms, kitchens, basements. So we all kind of do the same thing. And there's always going to be somebody out there that can do it a little cheaper and promise a little more. And it kind of just turns into a rat race after a while. I've been in construction my entire adult life, 20 years. I really know nothing else. Right out of high school, I went right into construction. I became a tradesman. I was a subcontractor for, gosh, more than 10 years. And this opportunity just kind of came to me. I didn't even really, I wasn't trying to get into this. I didn't know anything about restoration, right? I literally just had an opportunity that I decided to take. I learned as much as I could about it. Was I ever scared? No. Was I ever nervous? Maybe to myself, but I don't know, man. There's something about me. As soon as I step on a job site, like, my work pants are on, my work face is on. It's go time, right? And even if I was unsure about some things, I would figure them out. And I certainly wouldn't let the client or the insurance adjuster or anybody else know that, as far as they know, I've got this under control, right?
So when you think about it, like a niche, and you say, I'm going to do historic preservation, restoration, when you got into that and being a builder and in construction your whole life, did you think that there wouldn't be enough work in that? Or were you confident right out the gate that, man, there's enough work in this area? Um, why aren't other people doing it?
Kind of, yes and no. I understand right now in times like this, there's a lot of easy work. So maybe most guys just don't want to take on that stress, and I don't blame them. It's a totally different animal, right? You've got custom home builders, right, that also build within these same historic neighborhoods. Some of these historic homes can't be saved, right? So you have to go through this council, and you have to go through a lot of red tape to get a house approved to just completely demolish and rebuild. But I wouldn't build a custom home. I've built some, and that comes with a whole other list of headaches that just was not really a good fit for me, right? So those guys specialize in that, and they have a good reputation. And there's a few that not only niche into, let's say, custom home building, but they niche into the neighborhood itself. So you get one custom home builder, his entire workload is in one or two neighborhoods within a mile radius of each other. And I don't think they tried to do that. I think that that's just how the opportunity comes, right? And it's the same for me. The opportunity just kind of came and molded and kind of formed, and kind of just led me down this meandering path of, hey, you know what? Out of a regular bathroom or kitchen remodel, right? Let's say I get a good qualified lead, the customer has the money, has good expectations. There's maybe a 25-30% close rate on that lead, because I'm probably one of 4 or 5 contractors that they've seen, right? When I get into the preservation, these historic home neighborhoods, my conversion rate's 100%. And
Wow.
there's usually no other contractor that I'm even bidding against. In fact, no, I've done 7 of these now, and not a single one of them had another bid, right?
So that's an amazing stat right there. What would you say to other contractors, or, it could be any, I guess, any industry, in regards to picking a niche like that? Because, are they aware of it? Should they do it? Should they stay away from it? Because what I just heard you say is, when you're very specific, it leads to opportunity and sales. So that would tell me you need less appointments, you have less stress, you're probably
Yeah,
getting a better margin. Sounds like a pretty good setup to me. So
it
what
is.
what
It
would you
is.
say? Yeah.
Imagine just doing 2 or 3 of these a year to cover my salary and my overhead costs and my operational costs. I've got another project manager and I've got an office manager. So, you know, we still do regular remodels and basements and stuff like that, siding and roofing and all kinds of stuff. We don't say no to hardly anything, but the bread and butter are these massive whole house restoration jobs, right? And in the realm of a historic restoration, they're really getting a remodel, right? So to not confuse anybody about the insurance restoration, take that. Let's just pretend that we didn't even talk about that. That's neither here nor there. When 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 people are doing a whole house renovation on a historical property, they are getting a full-blown remodel. It's just we have guidelines, rules, very, very strict rules about what we can and can't do, what we can and can't change, right?
What would be an
Um,
example one of
Perfect,
those.
perfect example that is in every single bylaw of the neighborhood. And we can get into more detail. So there's no like blanket historical code, right? There isn't. Each historical code is created and developed by a council. That council is no different than your HOA. Okay, so everybody who lives in a neighborhood has an HOA, they have fees that they pay into, yada, yada, yada. Well, this historical council is made up of people who live in that neighborhood, and then it's also made up of, municipality officials, so let's say you're in Druid Hills, right? Druid Hills is kind of a subdivision of Decatur. Decatur's very historical. Decatur is a subsidy of DeKalb County, right? So in this particular historic committee, it's made up of some government officials that work directly for DeKalb County. It's made of some government officials that work directly for the city of Decatur, and then the rest is comprised of actual homeowners that live in this specific neighborhood. And you can have different rules on different neighborhoods in the same in the same.
We'll be right back to the show. I want to invite you to my Blue Collar Mastermind group. This is a group of blue-collar business owners who share input on tough topics, support, celebrate, and learn from each other. The world's best business owners, leaders, actors, athletes, and musicians all have coaches or are part of a similar group to grow and succeed. If you want more from your business, have limited time, don't want to break the bank, this group is for you. Learn more and apply to the group at bluecollarbusinesscoach.net.
3 or 4 blocks. So a perfect example, the same rule that I can guarantee applies to all of them. The house has got to look the same from the street.
That's a good baseline, because everybody's looking at it, and then I'm assuming they can make a lot more flexibility or adjustments inside.
So oftentimes what we're doing is, okay, if the front has to stay the same, the front elevation you can see from the street. A lot of times you can either see a left or a right elevation as well. Some committees are more lenient than others. And some of them will say, okay, the more predominant elevations on this house is the front and the left. Even though you can see the right, there's shrubs, there's trees, there's natural cover. You can't really see much of it. We'll allow you to do whatever you want on that side, right? So the sides that they don't care about are the sides that we are massively modifying, whether that's popping the top and building a second or third story or a loft, or blowing out the back and expanding and adding square footage. That's the most common thing that we're doing with these places, because a lot of them are small. A lot of these older homes that are 100 years old, they're not big houses. They're not big. They're 15, 16, maybe 2,000 square feet, right? And these people that are purchasing these homes are wealthy. They've got the money, and our I'm trying to think. Our average renovation is between $650,000 and $900,000. And that's just kind of the sweet spot of where everything is, right? So yeah, they're making massive changes to the sides of the house that the preservation committee doesn't care about. All right.
So what would you say for, a business owner that's looking to start a business, whether it's restoration or anything else, and to the person that's been in business? Because I'm hearing a lot of good stuff here, and just want to tie it to some teachable moments. But, when you look at being specific, you heard some of the numbers there, you heard some of the things, that Chris is sharing, and it's just the idea of you're very specific, but it's leading to revenue. So if somebody's starting a business, maybe what would be some advice that you would give them from what you learned? And
Sure.
maybe if somebody is in business and they haven't got specific in their service and what they're doing, what would you say to them?
Get out of your comfort zone, right? Um, there's that saying, something like, the best opportunities are the ones that we wait for, not the ones that we go and try to seek out, right? And I think that's true for a lot of us, and my counterparts that are general contractors, remodelers, restoration guys, a lot of us are friends, and a lot of their opportunities in their direction of business and their evolving business model often happen the same exact way, right? It's get out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to try new things, but I don't want to be that guy that says, just start getting into stuff that you have no idea what you're doing, right? I don't want you to do that. That's not good. That a lot of people, too many guys are doing that, right? You're not. I'm not a fan of the guy who quit his 9 to 5 day job selling, extended warranty on your auto, to quitting that job to next week going to Home Depot, buying himself a tool belt and some tools, and then calling himself a tradesman. I'm not talking about those guys, right? Um, you got to have some skin in the game. You got to know what you're doing. You have to play something safe, but at the same time, if you find yourself in the rat race, if you find yourself in a highly competitive market, it means that you're drowning in your own business model, right? Um, and I've done that far too long, just beating my head against the wall. I mean, how nice is it to have almost 100% conversion rates, right? And I say 100% conversion rates based on the same parameters. The client actually has the money to do it, and they actually have expectations that are in line with the things that they want. Sometimes I do get a homeowner who either doesn't have enough money or does not have the expectations to do a $500,000, renovation on their house, and I'm not going to convert that, right? I'm not going to waste my time with that. But if the client has the money, has a desire, has proper expectations, then yeah, I'm closing them every time. There's no competition, right? And I'm not like, it's not like I'm just like, well, since there's no competition, I'm gonna just throw numbers out and get exactly what I want. I still believe in value and fairness and stuff like that. And these people are getting plenty of that. But for somebody who feels stuck in the cycle, right? And those guys that this is resonating with, they know exactly what I'm talking about. If you feel stuck in the cycle and it's never ending for you, you have to start saying yes, or at least start saying maybe to some of these things that you previously shut your door on, right? Because there's no other way you're going to get out of that unless you try new things. If I
Yep.
didn't have historic renovations to do, I could easily fall back on fire restorations, right? Fire restorations is another niche that there's not a lot of competition in. There's not a lot of confidence in that, right? So I've got a plan A and a plan B, right? Luckily, I haven't had to go to plan B. I'm flush with work in these whole house renovations. And I don't really see an end in sight there. I mean, these are nice because these are 9 months to a year projects. There's no expectations of expeditiousness, right?
Right. They want it right.
They want it right, and they know it's going to take a year, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, I
that's
mean,
what's a challenge that maybe you had or something that you learned that you could pass on to people that are obviously currently in business or that are starting?
um, okay, here's a good one, and I'm not going to give out my system of doing this, um, but in crazy times like this, if a client wants a fixed contract price on the project, tell them no.
Yeah, that's it.
Before COVID and before, 3 years ago, no problem. But with market volatility, inflation, everything else, people want that security of knowing that you're not going to hit them change order with change order with change order, right? They want to have confidence that you know what you're bidding, but the problem is that there's no way that you can. If and don't even try. You would have to blow your bid so far out of the water that it becomes economically um you know not tangible for a client anyway. And why put yourself in that risk, right?
Right. Yeah, that's good advice. Times have definitely changed, and definitely got to stick to those guns because it's a crazy market. And
Yeah,
you know,
figure out a way to hit your price point and be competitive, but don't let a customer make you guarantee that. You can't guarantee it. Don't try. You're going to
that,
go out of business.
yeah, that'd be a sign to walk away because that definitely isn't working in the world,
No.
we live in today.
And that's such a traditional model, even if you're going with cost plus 20 or whatever, right? Which I don't do any of that. I've developed my own very specific contract agreement that doesn't involve cost plus anything, without getting without revealing what it is. All I can say is it solves the problem of me not taking the liability of owning the estimate.
Right.
You have a $900,000 project, right? If I mean, think about, Seth, if I started a $900,000 renovation today, it means I wrote that estimate at least 6 months ago.
Right.
Right. There's a lot of upfront work before you even start day one. A lot of pre-construction, a lot of meetings, a lot of this stuff. And look at where our pricing is and the volatility is just over a 6 month period,
Yeah, it's
right?
bonkers.
It's crazy.
Well, I think that's the other thing that I think is interesting too is, a lot of people don't want to put up with the headaches and all the meetings and the regulations. So, if you're somebody that likes that, or maybe you don't like it, but you found a way to make it successful, I think that's another thing to tap into. Find opportunities where people don't like to do things, or it's a little bit harder. And if
Mhm.
you can crack that code, that leads to great close rates. That leads to profitability. That can lead to many good things. So that might be an area to look at when you're looking to say, hey, I'm in this crazy cycle. I like to call it the crazy cycle. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again. You're not making money, or you're just living a crazy life that isn't good. Everybody knows it, and you just stay in that cycle. If you want to get out of that, maybe look for an opportunity of something like this that you can get in your industry. If you're obviously, if you're not in restoration, there's something that people don't like to do. There's something that you can do that you can get paid a lot for, and somebody else just doesn't want to deal with it. Um, I'm trying to think of an example, but there was a real specific example of like, just like, I can't remember what it was, but it was the most random service, and they just made a killing at it. It was something you would never think of. It was like replacing drain pipes or something in residential houses or something. I mean, just something that you wouldn't think there's enough money there,
Mhm.
but that's what they were known for. And they made a killing, and they had like, I think it was like 80 or 100 employees doing this. I mean, it was just ridiculous, but
Wow.
they were so specific on this that they were the go-to. So
Yeah.
it's just great encouragement to hear that.
It's out there. There's plenty of work. I wish that there was competition, honestly. I mean, there's enough to go around. And I think when we talk about getting stuck in that cycle, we know that the cycle isn't good for us, but we're comfortable in it. and I'm all too familiar with that. That's been the majority of my career, is being in that cycle that doesn't allow you to grow, doesn't allow you to have freedom, doesn't allow you time with your family, doesn't really allow you true wealth in the sense,
Oh
right?
yeah, correct.
Um,
Spot on.
right? So too many guys are looking for like the geese that laid the golden egg. That doesn't exist, right? Get out of your comfort zone and understand that there's pros and cons with everything that you do. If you want to make a little more money, you're going to have to take on things that may be a little more risky. But if you take on things that are a little more risky, you're getting away from everybody else. You're getting one step further away from the rat race. That takes you one step out of that cycle, right? Allow yourself to take on opportunities that have risk and reward. Yeah, I mean, you're right. When you talk about meetings, pre-construction, dealing with committees, dealing with so much red tape, I'm not about all this regulation. I'm very anti-regulation for the most part, but I deal with it. I go through it. Oftentimes, that's unpaid to me. That's time that I'm freely giving up front to make sure this project actually gets approved, right? Um, so there's a lot of free time, a lot of upfront time invested in these projects, and you know what? I go through those motions and I will deal with those things, right? If we put those in the cons list, I've got all these other pros that balance it out. Hey, I don't have competition. I don't have anybody bidding on me. The sale is easy and I actually enjoy it, you know? I mean, after 20 years, it's hard to enjoy anything that we do here. But this stuff is actually kind of cool. You know, you got to get creative and uh, a lot of people are appreciative of it a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
So you know, I'm kind of finding a newfound love, if you will, for construction again, you know, and the cycle just burned me out. 15 years of stuck in that cycle burned me out
Oh
completely.
yeah. One of the things that you mentioned previously, and it might have been one of our initial conversations, but the idea of the restoration kind of gave you a fondness of the preservation to be reducing waste, reusing it, and recycling. And I really found this interesting because not everybody, and I don't want to speak for the industry, but a lot of times in construction, this whole thing of recycling and reusing and some of that, it just really isn't cool, to be honest. It's not something that if you're the recycle guy, you're just not, it's just not a cool thing. So I mean, you can interpret it how you want. People can think about it, but I mean that's one of the things that I've seen over years. When you said that, I thought it was really interesting by working with some of these restoration projects and even some of the dynamic of COVID, you've seen some interesting things, and it actually gave you a new appreciation. And I guess you said, I think the word you used was a fondness of reducing, reusing, and recycling. So just maybe tell me a little bit about that, because I thought that was a really interesting uh, epiphany revelation that you had. And I think some other contractors should hear that.
Sure. So a lot of guys are in the same boat, right? I've never seen more dumpster divers now than I've ever have in my entire life, right? So everybody knows lumber's been crazy. I guarantee everybody is thinking a lot harder on reusing, reducing, and recycling their lumber spend. When you're the contractor and you're purchasing materials for your subcontractors are the most wasteful people on the planet. It's always been that way, and forever, that's just a part of it. It's waste, right? We calculate 10-15% waste in all of our stuff. We pass that waste on to our client to pay for it, and it ends up in the dumpster, right? Well, recently, not lately. You know, you go into Pulte, you go into Beezer, you go into these new neighborhoods. I literally they hire dumpster divers. These guys are going into their own dumpsters, taking out drops that are, if it's more than 8 feet long, pull it. It's coming out. Take that over to the next house, right? Um, you have to get creative. You have to in these times. You have to. It costs time, money, and energy to track and source waste, right? But I think the subcontractors are starting to feel the burn too, and I think that's really where it starts. It starts with having an ethical conversation with your own subcontractors about just how wasteful they actually are, right? It's not like you want to see it's not like you want to see a 12-foot wall with 3 pieces of crown spliced together on it, right? We're not talking about that. A lot of times we're talking about lumber, honestly. Framers are very wasteful. They're not buying the material, so what do they care, right? Running you ragged towards the end of the job, calling you, hey, we're 5 sheets of plywood short, or we need another half a bundle of 9-foot studs, right? And it's like, well, wait a minute. No way. I've accounted for waste. We should not be short, right? So reduce, reuse, recycle. It's something that I learned in fire restoration, something that is encouraged in historical preservation. And it's just a general practice now. Before that dumpster leaves the job site to get turned over, I'm looking in there, and you got to hold these guys accountable, right? You
Yeah, I think
have
it's
to.
powerful. I think it should just be encouraged, and just some of that preservation and restoration work, and kind of like you said, enjoying the history and the appreciation of the materials and how that did that, or how it works. It's just cool how you can see the value and that new perspective in materials. So even without COVID, and the prices, it's like, you've just seen a different value, different perspective. And I think that's pretty cool. So just a couple things to wrap up, some quick fire questions. The construction industry would be better
if Harry, Jack, and Tom stuck to their day job and stayed out of construction. Don't these guys think that this is like quick, easy money? And maybe it is for some, but that's not a sustainable model. I really, it really gets on my nerves to see guys with, fresh new magnetic signs on the sides of their beat up pickup truck, brand new ladder, brand new tool belt. And these guys go out and try to do some stuff. They've watched some YouTube videos and they think that they can make it. There's a fine line with that too, though, right? I do encourage people to come in and enter into the trades because I feel like our industry is doomed. There's a huge age gap and there's a huge skills gap, and it's playing out the worst I've ever seen. All of our super highly skilled tradesmen are ready to retire,
yeah, yeah,
right?
that's
It's a
pretty
huge
crazy.
it's a huge problem. So I encourage people getting into trades if they're taking the proper channels, right? But if you got these guys that are just sick of their day job and they think that there's a quick easy buck to make in construction, and they're just going to quit their day job and watch a few YouTube videos and go grab some tools and start hammering the market, don't don't stay out. Honestly, stay out. You're destroying what little reputation this industry has left. um that in and of itself would be a huge difference. If I came to potential customers and started hearing good stories about contractor experiences, that would make our industry better. but I never hear good stories. I never hear good stories. And I'll be the first to admit, I've got customers who would have bad stories about me, right? You you try to limit those as much as possible. I could confidently say 99% of my customers are 5-star review customers, right? There's always that 1% that it just didn't work out. But I get into the trades, work for a company for several years before you feel like you can just jump out on your own and do your own thing, get your own license, and just start banging out the market, right? Seriously.
Right. I can build a blank in my sleep. What is it?
In my sleep? God, I build a lot of things in my sleep. I can build a hidden door in my sleep.
There you go. That's a good one. Biggest skill.
Salesmanship.
Biggest challenge.
Biggest challenge would be back end administration.
Cabin or beach house?
Cabin.
Ford, Chevy, or we have a new one, Dodge, or none of the above?
I'm actually a really big fan of Dodge. I've had several Dodge Rams. I love them. I just ventured and got a Ford this time. I like the Ford, but I think I'm gonna go. Honestly, the GMCs are the nicest trucks.
GMCs. There you go. Got a
Yeah.
GMC.
Yeah.
Favorite brand of equipment?
That's an interesting question. Used to be DeWalt. That's no longer the case. Milwaukee is really coming up in my heart. I'm really becoming attached to Milwaukee.
Milwaukee's been a popular one. I don't know what they're doing. They must be really,
They're
you know.
on point, man. I mean, DeWalt. It used to be DeWalt through and through for me. You pay the extra bucks to get the better tool. It's not the case anymore. You pay the extra buck, and these DeWalt's tools are crap now, man. Crap.
Right.
Milwaukee comes up, man.
Yeah, Milwaukee's been that's probably the number one answer in that one right there. Last thing you got on Amazon.
Last what?
Last thing you got on Amazon.
Last thing I got on Amazon, which I get all the time. Always shopping. Okay, the last thing I got on Amazon is where's my orders? Okay. The last item I got on Amazon is a Colzer 180 pint dehumidifier.
There you go. You gotta keep the humidity down in those basements or whatever.
Yeah.
I want other business owners in construction to know what?
That if you guys have not started an online presence or have not started digital marketing, you're probably not going to make it.
That's a great one. That's spot on. Listen to that one on repeat. Do it. Chris, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate your insights. It was really helpful.
Thanks for having me, Seth. I appreciate it, brother.
Hey, it's Seth. Thanks for listening. For more information about my Blue Collar Mastermind Group, Blue Collar Gear, free resources, or my book, go to bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. You can subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy this. Thanks again.